Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing well and in good health. So my name is Jocelyn Navarta, and today I'm going to talk about the oral approach and situational language teaching. So let's begin. So many teachers now shared they believe that there is not a single way to teach a foreign language. So it is certainly true that no comparative study has consistently demonstrated the superiority of one method over another. So we already know about the existence of different methods such as grammar translation method, the direct method of the lingual method, the TPR or the communicative approach. However, today we are going to focus on the oral approach and situational language teaching method. So this method can be applied in any educational environment. Also, the approach encourages the oral production without risk and at the same time improve pronunciation, which is also we agreed is important. So let's begin first with its historical background. So the evolution and growth of the oral approach and the situational language teaching is a stretch across 1920s to 1960s. So it emerged as an important over absolutely tiny plane, which was monolingual inductive demonstrative of pronunciation focus of it. So in 1920s and 1930s, the focus era of English language investigation was vocabulary for reading proficiency and developing teaching material. Alright, so the founders of the oral approach and situational language teaching method were Harold Palmer, Albert Sidney Hornby, and Michael West. So during his stay in Japan, Harold Palmer tried to teach grammar through oral approach while trying to devise a more scientific and a specific method. So Harold Palmer constructed that a universal logic was applied in all languages all over the world, and it was the teacher's responsibility to understand and apply those in the class. So Michael West, while examining the role of English in India in 1920s, concluded that vocabulary was an important component for reading proficiency of foreign language. So these findings led the scholars to propose the first ever principle of syllabus design of language teaching. So that Palmer and Hornby changed grammar into structures of sentence pattern, which aims to help learners internalizing the grammatical rules. They also prepared a list of 2,000 words which aim to help learners in the 4 skills of language learning. So what are those 4 skills? First, we have the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So now let's move on with its main characteristics. So the main characteristics of that approach at the time were as follows. First, language teaching begins with the spoken language. So material is taught orally before it is presented in written form. Second, the target language is the language of the classroom. Third, new language points are introduced and practiced situationally. Fourth, vocabulary selection procedures are followed to ensure that an essential general service vocabulary is covered. Fifth, items of grammar are graded following the principle that simple forms should be taught before complex ones. And then the last one is reading and writing introduced once enough lexical and grammatical basis is established. Since in 1950s, the term structural situational approach or the situational language teaching came into common usage, and this included both structural, situational, and oral approaches. So now let's move on to its approach. So in the situational language teaching, speeches is regarded as the basis of language. So students are taught the basic grammatical structures of English word order, structural words, inflections, and content words. Real-life kind of situations should be contextualized in the classroom, so students can use the vocabulary or grammatical structures they learn in situations as similar as real life as possible while they're at school. The inductive approach is applied in the teaching of grammar. So now let's move on to the design. So the objective of the situational language teaching are as follows. So first, to learn a practical command of the 4 basic skills of language through structure. Second, the accuracy in both pronunciation and grammar. Third, the ability to respond quickly and accurately in speech situations. Fourth, the automatic control of basic structures and sentence patterns, which will be taught through speech work. So now let's move on to the syllabus. So situational language teaching uses a structural syllabus in a word list, which is a list of the basic structures and sentence patterns of English arranged according to their order of presentation. Alright, so here we have an example of a word list in a 3-class lesson plan. So the word list B. For the first lesson, the sentence patterns are this is and that is. And the vocabulary to be used are bag, cake, oven, and pen. For the second lesson, the patterns are these are and those are. And the vocabulary are papers, apples, dolls, and books. And finally, for the third lesson, the patterns are is this, yes it is, and is that, yes it is. And the vocabulary are balloon, flower, chalk, and computer. Types of activities. Alright, so students must be taught through situations. So a situation wherein the teacher will going to use concrete objects, pictures, and reality together with actions and gestures that can be used to demonstrate the meaning of new items. So next, the learner's role. So the role of the learner here is, or the learner has a passive role. They listen and repeat what the teacher says and respond to his questions and commands. On the other hand, they have no control over the content of learning, and participation is encouraged where they are exposed to respond and ask each other. So they are meant to exposed to respond and ask each other in the classroom, okay? So it's not just like teacher to teacher and students to students. So here, the teacher and students must have an interaction between one another. So next, teacher's role. So if the role of the learner is passive, then of course the teacher is going to be active. So the teacher strictly checks the pronunciation, grammar, and everything about the structural errors during drilling. On the other hand, the instructor is highly demonstrative through different teaching aids like wall charts, flashcards, posters, pictures, stick figures, and so on. Then the teacher is supposed to have mastery over prescribed textbook. Then the teacher serves as a model in the classroom. So now let's move on to the procedure. So this method aims to move from control to freer practice of structures and from oral use of sentence patterns to their automatic use in speech, reading, and writing. So in this method, its aim is that students should, use the language that they've learned in the classroom. So this should be used automatically in the speech and writing and reading and writing. So now let's move on to its advantages. So actually it is comprised of 4 advantages. So first, the subject matter can be explained easily. Next, it helps to introduce the vocabulary, including abstract vocabulary, by using real as well as plain situation. Next, teaching becomes very effective, interesting, and alive instead of a burdensome process. Lastly, meaning is clearer and easier to understand, which facilitates the students in learning the language knowledge by heart. So if it has an advantages, then of course it also has some disadvantages. So we have here prepared 3 disadvantages. So first, teachers found it difficult to present all the items in the appropriate situations, and this formed an extra burden for teachers. Next, the learner has no control over the content at all. And the next, the final is no account for the fundamental characteristics of language, namely the creativity and uniqueness of individual sentences. So we are now at the last part of the discussion. So I have prepared 4 different types of pictures. Now let's try to answer it. So sample activity. Now try to look at the first picture. Now the question is, what is he doing? He is driving. In the second one, what is she doing? She is sleeping. In the third one, what is he doing? He is cooking. Then finally, in the last picture, what are they doing? They are eating an ice cream. Very good. So this principle of situational language teaching, with its strong emphasis on oral practice, grammar, and sentence patterns, conform to the intuitions of many language teachers, where national English foreign language and English as second language syllabuses continue to be grammatically based. So it continues to be widely used, though not necessarily widely acknowledged. So this method is still being used in some countries until today, and what I want to add is that, the difference between this and direct method is that direct method was not systematic in terms of theorem practice. Also, because there are a lot of similarities between this method and other lingo limited, and this one, I said a while ago that it was established in Britain, while the other one is established in the United States, and they were both subjects and are approximately the same varied, but this method was before the ordinary method. Okay? And yeah, that's it for today. So thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your listening, and stay safe, everyone. God bless.